In the 1920s, Wall Street wasn't just creating millionaires, it was perfecting a trap. On the surface, America was a glittering spectacle of jazz, flappers, and endless prosperity. It was an era where everyone, from the shoeshine boy to the industrial tycoon, believed they had a ticket to unimaginable wealth. But beneath the shimmering veneer of the Roaring Twenties, the foundation of the American economy was being systematically hollowed out by a handful of powerful men. This wasn't just optimism, it was a grand illusion. The great crash of 1929 wasn't an accident. It was the explosive finale of the single greatest heist in American history, and almost everyone was about to get caught in the blast. The decade was a symphony of delusion, and Wall Street was its conductor. A new philosophy had taken hold, the idea of a permanent plateau of prosperity. Economists and financial gurus assured the public that the old rules of boom and bust no longer applied. Stocks, they claimed, could only go up. This intoxicating message spread like a contagion, luring millions of ordinary Americans into a world they didn't understand. The vehicle for this mass gamble was a deceptively simple tool called buying on margin. In essence, it was a loan from a broker. An investor could put down just 10% of a stock's price, and the broker would cover the other 90%. It was financial dynamite, allowing people to control 10 times more stock than they could actually afford. A small rise in the market could generate spectacular profits. But no one dared to whisper about the catastrophic risk on the other side. If the stock fell, even slightly, the investor would get a margin call, a demand for immediate cash to cover the losses. Failure to pay meant the broker would sell the stock instantly, wiping the investor out completely. By 1929, the total amount of brokers' loans had skyrocketed to over $8.5 billion, more than the entire amount of currency circulating in the United States at the time. A nation was gambling with borrowed money on a game it was destined to lose because the deck was already stacked. While the public was dreaming of riches, the real masters of the universe were playing a different game entirely. Behind the closed doors of smoke-filled boardrooms, they perfected a technique of market manipulation known as the stock pool. It was a sophisticated, coordinated scam run by an exclusive club of Wall Street's most powerful insiders. The process was brutally effective. A group of financiers would secretly choose a target stock, often something with a buzz-worthy new technology like radio. They would begin quietly accumulating massive amounts of shares at a low price. Then, the second phase would begin, the hype machine. The pool operators would bribe journalists and financial writers to publish glowing articles and fake news about the company's incredible prospects. They'd use their influence to get famous economists to endorse the stock. As public excitement grew, the pool members would start trading shares amongst themselves at artificially high prices, creating the illusion of massive volume and demand. The ticker tape, which the public watched religiously, would light up with activity for the target stock, drawing in waves of unsuspecting investors desperate not to miss out. This was the final, predatory phase. Once the stock reached its manufactured peak and the public was in a buying frenzy, the pool operators would pull the plug. In a coordinated move, they would dump all of their shares onto the market at once, reaping colossal profits. The stock would instantly collapse, leaving the small-time investors who had bought at the top holding worthless paper. One of the most infamous examples was the RCA pool, orchestrated by the legendary speculator Michael Meehan. In just 1 week, they drove RCA's stock up by nearly 50%, then cashed out, walking away with millions while the public was left with the wreckage. This wasn't investing, it was a meticulously planned ambush, but the corruption ran far deeper than rogue speculators. It infected the very heart of America's banking system. No story is more damning than that of Albert H. Wiggin, the revered chairman of Chase National Bank, one of the largest and most trusted financial institutions in the world. Wiggin was the picture of financial stability and public trust, but in secret, he committed the ultimate act of betrayal. As the market climbed to dizzying, unsustainable heights in 1929, Wiggin knew a crash was inevitable, and he decided to profit from it by destroying his own customers and shareholders. Through a series of privately owned Canadian corporations, Completely hidden from the public and even his own board of directors, Wiggin began to short sell his own bank's stock. Shorting is a bet that a stock will go down. He was actively betting against the very institution he was sworn to protect. When the market crashed in October and Chase stock plummeted along with everything else, investors were financially ruined. Families who had put their life savings into Chase, trusting in Wiggin's leadership, lost everything. But Albert Wiggin made a personal profit of over $4 million, a staggering sum at the time. He had built his fortune on the ruins of his own company and the lives of the people who had trusted him. When his actions were later exposed, the public was left with a horrifying realization. The men steering the ship were the same ones drilling holes in the hull. Wiggin wasn't an anomaly. He was part of a culture of predatory greed that defined the era's elite. And few were more skilled at this game than Charles E. Mitchell, the chairman of National City Bank, the forerunner of today's Citibank. Mitchell was known as Sunshine Charlie for his relentless optimism and his revolutionary approach to banking. His vision was to transform banking from a service for the wealthy into a massive retail operation for the masses. He put a stock salesman in every branch, turning his bankers into high-pressure salesmen who were incentivized to push securities onto anyone who walked through the door, regardless of the risk. Mitchell's National City Company, an affiliate of the bank, became a machine for churning out and selling questionable stocks and bonds, many from shaky Latin American countries. They bought these securities cheap, marked them up, and then sold them to their own banking customers, often with the implicit promise that they were safe, National City-approved investments. When these foreign bonds inevitably defaulted, it was the small investors who were wiped out, while Mitchell's bank had already taken its cut. But his most brazen act came during the crash itself. As the market imploded, Mitchell, like every other wealthy speculator, faced massive personal margin calls. He owed millions.
But instead of facing ruin like everyone else, he simply arranged for National City Bank to give him an interest-free personal loan of over $2.4 million to cover his losses. He used the bank's money, his customers' money, as a personal parachute while they were in freefall with no way out. It was a stunning display of hypocrisy, proving that on Wall Street, there was one set of rules for the elite and another for everyone else. At the very pinnacle of this corrupt system was the New York Stock Exchange itself, and its public face was its dashing vice president, Richard Whitney. As the market began its terrifying slide on October 24, 1929, a day that would become known as Black Thursday, panic gripped the trading floor. The system was on the verge of complete collapse. Suddenly, Richard Whitney strode confidently into the chaos. In a bold theatrical gesture, he walked over to the trading post for U.S. Steel and placed an outrageously high bid for 25,000 shares, well above the current market price. He then did the same for other key stocks. This dramatic act, seemingly a move by a coalition of powerful bankers to restore confidence, momentarily stopped the panic. The market rallied. Newspapers hailed Whitney as the White Knight of Wall Street, a hero who had single-handedly stared down the abyss. For a brief moment, America believed it had been saved. But it was all a lie. The man who represented the integrity of the entire market was a complete fraud. For years, Richard Whitney had been running his own private scams. He was embezzling money from the New York Yacht Club, from his own father-in-law's estate, and even from the NYSE's gratuity fund, which was meant to support the families of deceased members. He was a financial degenerate, secretly drowning in debt while projecting an image of untouchable power. His famous rescue on Black Thursday was nothing more than a desperate attempt to prop up the market long enough to save his own skin. Years later, his crimes were exposed, and the hero of Wall Street was arrested, convicted, and sent to Sing Sing prison. The revelation shattered what little public trust was left. The gatekeeper himself had been one of the biggest crooks of all. The false dawn provided by Whitney's stunt lasted less than a day. The following week, on October 29, 1929, Black Tuesday, the floor gave out completely. This time, there were no heroes, no saviors. Total chaos kicked off as the opening bell rang. A whopping 16 million shares were traded, a record that lasted almost 40 years. Traded isn't the right word. It was a wild panic, sell-off. The ticker tape couldn't keep up with the chaos. Investors were left clueless about their stock values. They just realized their worth was fading every second. Brokers and clerks were in chaos, shouting in despair. Stories started popping up about investors who were millionaires in the morning but totally broke by lunchtime. Rumors, though often exaggerated, spread of men ending their own lives. The optimism of the Roaring Twenties had curdled into a thick, suffocating dread. In a matter of days, over $30 billion in wealth equivalent to more than $400 billion today had vanished into thin air. It was more money than the United States had spent on the entirety of World War I. The great American dream peddled so aggressively by the likes of Charles Mitchell and propped up by the manipulations of the stock pools was now exposed for what it was: a house of cards collapsing under the weight of its own fraud. In the bleak aftermath, as the country spiraled into the Great Depression, a furious and betrayed public demanded answers. They got them from a man named Ferdinand Pecora, the lead counsel for the U.S. Senate Committee on Banking and Currency. The Pecora Commission, as it became known, was a public reckoning. For the first time, the titans of Wall Street were dragged from their private clubs and forced to testify under oath, their secrets laid bare for the entire nation to see. One by one, the architects of the crash were put on the stand. Charles Mitchell was grilled, forced to admit to the millions he had made selling risky bonds to his customers, and the interest-free loan he had given himself. Albert Wiggin was forced to explain how he made his fortune by shorting his own bank's stock, a revelation that so shocked the public it was later outlawed and dubbed the Wiggin Provision. J.P. Morgan Jr. was questioned, and revealed he had paid no income tax for several years, further enraging a starving populace. The hearings were broadcast on the radio and covered obsessively by newspapers. For millions of Americans, it was the first time they truly understood the depth of the rot. It wasn't just a few bad apples. The entire system was a casino where the house always won because it had rigged the games. The testimony from the Pecora Commission was so damning that it directly led to landmark financial reforms, including the Glass-Steagall Act, which separated commercial and investment banking, and the creation of the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, to police Wall Street. A line had been drawn, a desperate attempt to ensure such a catastrophe could never happen again. The Great Crash of 1929 was more than just a financial event. It was a profound moral crisis. It revealed a system where those at the very top felt no duty to the public they served, only to their own insatiable greed. The architects of the boom, the bankers, the pool operators, the so-called heroes, were the same men who engineered its spectacular collapse, and many of them walked away with their fortunes intact, while a generation of Americans was plunged into poverty. The regulations that rose from the ashes, like the SEC, were meant to be a permanent shield against such fraud. But nearly a century later, as we witnessed new and ever more complex financial instruments, bailouts, and market manias, a chilling question remains: was the lesson truly learned, or did the heist just get more sophisticated? If you want to uncover more stories of financial deception and the hidden history of money, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. And let me know in the comments below. Do you think Wall Street has fundamentally changed, or is the system still rigged? Click the video on your screen now for another story you won't want to miss.